First thing we want to try to do is figure out our horizon line. And that's important with architecture because all of your receding planes are going to recede or slant toward a vanishing point on the horizon line. A lot of times vanishing points will not be in your painting, but you want to have that overall slant toward the horizon line. And if you don't know what your horizon line is, of course, you can't do that. Now I'm going to put the horizon line about a third of the way up. Generally what the horizon line also is, it's just eye level. So if you're out there painting and you stand in a ditch and another guy's painting up on a hill, you're gonna have different horizon lines. Now something important that can really throw you off, because it did to me, and I think this is our intellect that kicks in and overrides our vision. So here's the monthly demo, and this looks, it almost like your mind will trick you thinking that this is as long as that, but it's not. It's actually quite a bit shorter. So if I measure this, you can see it's just a little over half of what this is. Because intellectually we know that this side is longer, but visually we're seeing it where this side is. So I'm going to create a slant, because remember, this is a receding plane that recedes away toward our horizon line, to a vanishing point on the horizon line. Anything below the horizon line is going to slant up. Anything above the horizon line is going to slant down. And here's what happens is that the further down a horizontal line gets on a receding plane, the further away it gets from the horizon line, the more of a slant it gets to it. That's if they're receding to the same vanishing point, which this plane would be. Both this line and the next line are going to recede to the same vanishing point, which means that this line down here has to have maybe a hair more slant to it, but it's very, very subtle. What you want to make sure though is that this side is just a hair shorter from this point to this point than this side is. So that this distance between here and here vertically should be longer than this distance between here and here, with both of these slanting up a little bit. So many people mess that up. This side slightly recedes away too, but it's super, super slight. We're dealing with very subtle 2-point perspective. So this is going to have a slight slant. Now, the nice thing about this is a lot of this stuff is going to be covered up by vegetation. You know, especially this bottom line here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you still want to have the feeling of the correct structure there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle in here, and I'm not going to worry much. I'm going to follow the rules of principle of perspective, but this is so slight here that you really don't have to worry about a change between here and here and there and there. And this is a trick you can always use to try to figure out where, when you have a pitched roof, where the point exactly should line up with the rest of the architecture. And I'm going to draw an X in this box from here to here, and then from there to there. I'm going to figure out the center of that X. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a vertical line straight up. Somewhere on this line is where my pitched roof should come together. Now I got to figure out how high I want my barn to be. I'm going to have it come to about right there. When you learn the fundamentals, you don't have to copy like a Xerox copy machine. You can change things and it'll still look correct because the fundamentals behind it are correct. Now with this roof here, there's a bit of an overhang. So before this vertical line, I'm going to create a bit of an angle because it does overhang a little bit, which kind of changes that line I just put in. And it comes slightly past that vertical line. I come up like this. Another thing you can do is if you want to get the the architecture more precise, you can measure how long is this angle compared to this angle, this next angle we're going to put in. But more importantly, how long do you want it to be? You can change it up. You can make the one smaller than the other. There are barns like that. But you can change the height of the barn too. Once you get the fundamentals down of architecture and perspective, you can change that all you want. So we have to replicate the same thing here. And this line here, where this is, now this is going to slope ever so slightly down because we're above the horizon line here. So this has to meet up with its, where it corresponds over here on this line. All right. These angles here are going to be pretty much the same, but I will say this is that this angle right here, it's probably going to have a little more pitch to it back here because it's a little further away, because these are receding to a vanishing point up in the sky and they got to meet up. This one's further away, so this one's going to have a slight more pitch to it, but it's not something I really obsess over. You probably wouldn't even notice it. But just make sure that this line we're putting in here does not go like this. It should go the same or a hair more like this. I'm exaggerating, but hopefully that makes sense. Honestly, what I will do is I will just stick it in there and feel it out and make adjustments to it. I kind of treat them as like tinker toys. But this point should be just a smidget lower from the horizon, toward the horizon line than this point here. Because you do not want this line going like this. You want this line to be at least parallel, but maybe just slightly slanting downward toward the horizon line, if that makes sense. And if none of this makes sense, let me know. Speak up, but hopefully it does. And then I'll just connect the dots there. And the same thing goes for the pitch of this line here. It should not be more vertical. It should have more of a slant to it, the same or more of a slant to it than this one here. The slant of this roof, the very top of it, of course, is going to slant down toward the horizon line. It shouldn't be even, it shouldn't be up, it should have a slight slant down. This is where you kind of have to feel it out a little bit. So a lot of times what I'll do with this is I will start to make kind of half lines and kind of bring them together with, and this is why I keep it sketchy at this point. Now it's got a little too much pitch to it, I think. So I'm going to straighten it out a little bit more.